welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro with C-Win joining us in studio. So glad you could join us. By the way, on a quick note before we get to our guest. So Cory Booker, as you know, he's a presidential candidate on the Democratic side, and he's made some appearances in Nevada, and our producers reached out to them, and we've tried to get him on the show, and they've declined. Because, you know, why would you want to go on a local show in Las Vegas and get your point across when you're getting less than 1% of the vote in the state, right? Why would you want to do that? We just saw him on the Wendy Williams show this morning, so I'm sure that will really help his poll numbers in Nevada. So
major boost, right?
Great
all
job.
kinds of action.
Great job by the Booker buffoon campaign. Great job, guys. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. Maybe you'll get to 1.5% in the polls. So thank you, Cory, for your time. We really appreciate that. I'm sure Wendy Williams really appreciates it too. All right, so quickly, let's get to some hoops. UNLV, NBA, and it's been a little while since we had this guy on the show, and he is our hoops guru himself. He is from Drive Time Sports, and he is Jameison Welsh. Jameison, thanks for coming on. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's about damn time. It's been a while.
It has been a while since you came on. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate that.
I totally agree, Jameson.
So before we get to the NBA, let's start and talk a little college hoops. UNLV struggled, the basketball program, giving away a few games. Kansas State at Cal. I thought that was a really tough loss for them. I don't think anybody really truly expected them to beat UCLA, but how do you make of the TJ Otzelberger era so far and what has taken place?
It's off to a little bit of a rough start because, as you mentioned, the two games, the game versus Cal, especially that game, they had no business losing that game. And in the game versus Kansas State, both those were winnable games, and they lost. And those are the games that if you get, those are big momentum games that kind of set the tone for the season. And you lose, and it's like, oh, here we go again. You hope that the team builds on, you hope they build on some of the performances they've had. But the UCLA game, they weren't even close. That's the game. And UCLA's not even that good this year. I know the name is going to get people, but the team of UCLA is nowhere near as what it usually is. So we'll see what happens going forward. I'm very interested to see what happens in conference play. But hopefully they do improve as the season goes on.
I spoke to a few D1 coaches that said, look, and TJ, he had one of the top players in the country at South Dakota State, so anybody's offense will look good if you got a guy that could do things from the inside and the outside, create for himself, create for others. He doesn't have that luxury at UNLV. He doesn't have that type of player. Do you agree with that?
To an extent. I mean, Hardy's a good player. Donnie Tillman from Utah is a good player as well. So, I mean, there's talent. There's talent there. I mean, the thing I would say is, like any other coach, give it time. Like, I'm not a big fan of firing coaches in 2 years in or anything like that, especially when he took over a roster that was, it was what it was. I do think there is some talent on the roster. It wasn't like the first, it wasn't like the first year of the Menzies there where it was really bad.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's one of those situations where I think any first-year coach should get time. And I think there's some promise there, but again, some of those games you got to, especially Cal.
I agree.
That game you got to pull away.
Yeah, they had to. I agree. It's not time to panic, but I think we all agree it was not off to a great start as far as wins and losses and throwing away a few games that you probably should have won. Okay, Jameison, let's talk about your expertise, which is the NBA, and let's start with the Lakers last night. I thought it was a really cool moment to see Kobe Bryant courtside with his daughter sitting there. Had a nice little chit-chat with LeBron James and Dwight Howard, who they haven't always gotten along, him and Dwight Howard. So I thought that was really cool. A lot of people were kind of reading his lips saying, hey, it's good to see you here. It's good to see you. And I thought that was really a nice moment. LeBron had a great game last night. He played really well in front of Kobe and the fans. And, they played against a horrible team, right, in the Atlanta Hawks. But, look, I just thought it was a great moment for the Lakers and the Laker family to see Kobe there. Talk a little bit about that moment. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's a good moment. I mean, whenever you have one of the best players ever play, if not the best, that's always, it's always a good moment. And you have a team that's doing really well. If the Lakers were 3-7, the moment wouldn't be the same. But they're a really good team right now. They have a really good record, playing very well, especially on the defensive end, which is always a good sign. So they're in good shape. I mean, when you're winning, everything's good. When you're winning, everything is roses and everybody's getting along. Everyone's happy, even though the offense isn't clicking like it probably should. But, with that being said, it's still mid-November, so it's still early, still time and whatnot. But it is a good sign, though, because a lot of times whenever you overhaul a roster, you change 8 or 9 guys on the roster, you're going to see some issues early, and it really hasn't been. I mean, you look at the team, look at their situation, everyone pretty much knows their roles and they're settled fairly well. So this is a good situation. If they can stay healthy, they have a good shot of being a top 3 seed out west.
So the other team in Los Angeles, obviously the Clippers, Jameison, and there's been this discussion here early on in the NBA season about time management, right, and whether or not guys should be sitting out games, and whether or not they have a legitimate injury or not, and what the case is with that. I got to get your perspective because it's my opinion that this is something that's kind of just transpired necessarily, basically in the past 5 years where we've had a focus on it, and to me, I don't think it's something that's very good for the NBA, given that. Look, if you're injured, you're injured. You can't play, in my opinion, okay? But if you're sitting out games because you have some type of mental block in your head where you think there's a gas tank on your body and it's somehow going to, you have a better chance of getting injured because you don't play, because you play in a back-to-back, is just something that is foreign to me, given someone who grew up in the era of the, late 70s, 80s, and 90s NBA like I did. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this entire time management situation in the NBA.
I feel you completely. As a fan, I'm not a big fan of it because you want to watch your guys play. You want to watch your favorite players play. Mm-hmm. However, big picture, especially for teams contending, like if your team's winning 25 games, I don't need to hear about load management. Like that's not where we're at with this thing. Like you need to play as many games as possible. But if your team's going to be playing in May and June, I get it. Like I understand. So, for instance, back in the day, the Pistons went to 3 straight finals in a row. If I'm not mistaken, 88, 89, and 90.
Yes.
And went to the conference finals in 91. If they would have had some load management mixed in there, who knows what happens?
I mean, think about this, though. Can you imagine, though, Michael Jordan playing for the Bulls and say he goes up to Detroit and plays a Tuesday game against the Pistons, and then on Wednesday they've got a matchup with the Cavaliers at the Richfield Coliseum, right? The very next night. And can you imagine the Bulls and Jordan saying, you know what? We're going to sit down Michael Jordan because we need to rest him on this back-to-back because we're worried about the playoffs 4 or 5 months down the line. You understand where I'm going here, Jameison?
Oh, no, I know. I understand completely. I see arguments for, and I see arguments on both sides. And my thing is this. I get it. I'm not a big fan of it, but I get it. However, we've seen guys' bodies break down because you're playing 82 games in a 6-month span, a little bit less than 6 months. So I understand what it does to a body. At the same time, if I'm paying a ticket or if I am, tuning into a game on Thursday night, I want to see the players play. So I get both sides of it. There's no resolution to this because either way it goes, it's gonna be tough. Like it's gonna be very difficult. I don't think there's a solution in sight.
And you mentioned playing on a say it's a TNT game and it's the Lakers and the Clippers and Kawhi's played 5 out of 6 games over the last 7 days and it's a nationally televised game and you've got this $15 billion TV contract. I wonder if they would be looked at more. I wonder if a player decided to miss that game as opposed to a game against the Memphis Grizzlies at home or something like that, if there would be a more harsher punishment considering how many eyes are actually watching that game. I want to talk about the Golden State Warriors. Is the fall from grace from being a dynasty to being 2-12 with Draymond Green, no Klay Thompson, no Steph Curry, no Kevin Durant. Do you think that they are done? Or, I mean, have you ever seen a fall from grace this dramatic, this fast before in the NBA, Jameison?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it happens. Like, whenever someone goes on a run of 5 years, the end game is never good. Remember, the Bulls in the late of the 90s, they're, once everybody left and retired and got traded, they were picked in the lottery. They had the number 2 pick in the draft the following year. So that's just kind of how it goes. Like, once you have a long run, in the NBA, it's very tough to have a good team for more than 3 and 4 years because you're going to the playoffs basically playing 100 games in 7 months. It's very difficult to do. Like, it's very, very hard on the body time and time again. You're taking everyone's best shot for all the years. And the Warriors run went, they've made the playoffs 7 straight years, and they had long seasons, and the way they played is very, very difficult to sustain, and they had some crazy injuries. So this is not surprising. The injuries, how it ended is a little bit different. They've had catastrophic injuries. Klay tearing his ACL, Steph with injuries had this season. But at the same time, this is the blessing in disguise for them. They're going to get a top 5 pick, and they're either going to trade and get somebody for it, or they're going to draft Wiseman or whomever is available, Anthony Edwards, whomever, and get back right into the thick of things. So they're in good shape going forward. It's just this year, it's one of those, it's a mulligan. It happens. No one will remember it. No one's going to remember it in the grand scheme if they get right back in the thick of things. It's not going to happen.
So, Jameison, I have to ask you a quick question because myself and Brian Shapiro went back and forth on this going back to the Lakers. Dwight Howard, okay, has had a tremendously long career. He's been productive on the court. Now, we understand he's been someone who's an enigma off the court, and to be quite frank, he's been looked at as a locker room killer, someone who is, has not exactly been the greatest teammate, let's put it that way. But I posted the poll on Twitter as to whether or not he is a Hall of Famer. Brian believes that he's not a Hall of Fame player. Myself, I believe that. I think it's a crazy question to think that he's not a Hall of Famer. So I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. What do you think about D12, and do you think he's headed to Springfield?
All right, so Dwight Howard is not only the Hall of Famer, he's the first ballot Hall of Famer. He's been a 8-time All-Star, so anyone who's made – I don't know if anyone who's eligible has made 8 All-Stars and has not gotten in. That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. 5 All-NBA team guy. He's a situation where he's going to be on that team. Like he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. That's just how it goes. There's nothing.
I'll respond to that. I'll respond to that
and he's going to be a first ballot. That's just what it is.
Okay, I'll respond to that by saying this. These are two different questions. Is he going to be in the Hall of Fame, or do you believe he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame? Now, there are certain people.
Yeah,
well, hold on. I'm gonna pull back on you on that one. If you look at just stats alone, I completely agree with you. Yes, that is a Hall of Fame career. But a man that has personally gotten coaches fired, for a man that is arguably one of the softest big men in the history of the league, and I know you're going to talk about some of the numbers he had with the rebounds he was averaging and that sort of thing. For a man that's never won a ring, and I know none of these things you have to be in the Hall of Fame. I understand that. I believe he is a crybaby. I believe in many instances he's been a cancer in the locker room to his teams. And, maybe he's in the later stages of a career and he'll do a great job with the Lakers, and maybe he will win a championship. But I'm just, listen, you can go back and you can look at certain baseball players that may or may not have cheated, and they're not going to be in the Hall of Fame. You look at Pete Rose because of the gambling issues. I'm just saying there are other circumstances that can be equated into being into the Hall of Fame, and it doesn't necessarily only have to be about stats. It could be about things off the field that you've done, and in my personal opinion, and that's fine if you guys disagree with me, I think the way he has conducted himself, he hasn't broken the law. He's not a rapist. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that he has been a cancer in the locker room. He is a crybaby. He is responsible for many coaches, some very respected coaches like Stan Van Gundy, of being fired. That's not a guy that I think deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and that has nothing to do with his stats and everything to do with the things he does off the basketball court.
What you mean what the Hall of Fame means from a...
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
But Jameison, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this is my perspective, Brian, on what you just said there. There's also people that are in the Hall of Fame, okay, that have the same aspects that Dwight Howard has.
And
off
I
the
don't
court,
agree
like
with
you're
those
talking
either.
about.
And I
well,
don't
they're in the
agree
Hall
with
of
them.
Fame.
And I don't agree with those either.
My point is, it's not just about stats.
By that logic, then MJ's not a Hall of Famer. Because
Michael Jordan,
he wasn't the best. He wasn't the best off the court.
Excuse me. Hold on a second. Michael Jordan, without question,
Obviously.
made his teammates. Made his teammates better. That is an unbelievable quality to have. I do not believe that Dwight Howard has ever made his teammates better. I believe he's extremely selfish. That's number one. Number two, I also believe if you're going to compare the two, just from practices and getting coaches fired. I mean, Michael Jordan did a pretty good job working with Phil Jackson. I'm not sure Michael Jordan is responsible for getting any coaches fired. He made his.
Collins.
That's a different circumstance in
that's
my
why I like you, Jameison.
That he might have been partially responsible for getting Doug Collins, but that's after he retired. That's not when he was in his prime.
No, bring it back.
He retired and then he came back.
Yeah. No, Doug Collins in the 80s got fired, and part of that was because of Michael. So let's not just.
Are you talking about when he was playing for the Wizards?
Bulls. No, Michael Jordan was playing for the Bulls.
You're going
and
back.
He got Doug Collins fired from being the head coach of the Bulls.
Then why would he allow Doug Collins to coach the team when he was with the Washington Wizards?
Because he felt bad about it. That's why.
All right, if you say so. I don't know if I believe that.
Jameison, 2 questions about this year. Who is your MVP?
Well, you just want to end that? You don't want to let Jameison respond?
Jameison, he did. He said he felt bad about it. That's why.
About what I said about Dwight Howard.
Off the court. I mean, if for a guy who's never been arrested or anything of that situation, if they were just talking about personalities and whatnot, that's a tough thing, because a lot of guys, they don't have the best personalities, but they're great players. Yep. Dwight has made a lot of guys better. He played in a small market, so we didn't get to see him play 40 times a season. when he was in Orlando. Remember, in Orlando, they were still considered a small market.
Why has he
team.
never won a championship?
He went up against the wrong guys at the wrong time.
Yep.
He went up against prime Kobe and Gasol.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And went against the Celtics, who were very good in 08, 09, 2010.
And you could argue
But
that.
Brian, there's been plenty of great NBA players that didn't win a championship.
I'm giving you several
You
different
ask a loaded
reasons. There's
question
not
like
one
that.
reason.
Why didn't he win?
Why didn't Karl Malone win a
yeah.
championship?
Why didn't Karl Malone and John
think there's a-
Stockton, two
I'll answer that.
superstars?
I'll answer that.
Michael
obviously,
Jordan.
obviously,
When he was in Orlando,
I'll give
what
you.
other Hall of Famer did he play with?
I will.
He was first ballot.
I will.
guy.
Well, let me answer their question about Karl Malone and John Stockton. I do believe, even though they were going up against some of the best legends and the best dynasties, I think they underachieved to this extent. I think they could have gotten at least one championship. They didn't have a ton of help on those teams in Utah.
I think Jeff Hornacek. That's
But
a
when
big
you
deal.
have Utah,
Brian Russell's great.
When you have Karl Malone and you have John Stockton, who arguably one of the best point guards of all time. I think you can make the. Am I saying they don't deserve to be Hall of Famers? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that.
Now, but why is Stockton one of the best of all time? Because his stats were so gaudy
Assists.
for an extended period. One, steals, assists and steals.
Yeah,
But he was
ferocious.
He wasn't a dominating physical presence, which is basically required, I believe, to win a championship.
Most point guards are not dominating physical presences.
But he's.
Is Rajon Rondo a dominating physical presence? He won a championship.
Rajon Rondo had a lot more talent around him than John Stockton did. Stockton only had Malone.
You just said a physical presence. I don't
No,
think
I'm
most
saying-
point guards
I'm saying
need to be a
he would-
ferocious physical.
He would need to be. Now Dwight Howard, you could argue, was the best athlete at his position for about a decade.
Did Dwight Howard ever cheat? Did he ever take steroids?
Do you remember the dunk contest
No,
where he
as of
was
right now,
wearing
no.
he was wearing the Superman outfit, and he had like a 42-inch vertical at 6'10". I mean, that's
You
unheard
guys
of for
don't
the
think
position.
Dwight Howard is one of the softest big men around?
I think he's soft, but I think Jameison. I think you'd agree with me, right? Jameison, you think Brian Shapiro doesn't think Dwight Howard should be in the Hall of Fame because of his attitude, right?
That's
I
not
think
only it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's not it.
That's not it. Your entire reasoning behind Dwight Howard not being a Hall of Famer is because of you call him a coach killer, and you think in his attitude and his approach.
He's got one coach fired. There's guys that have gotten multiple. I mean, hell, what do you feel about Darren Williams?
Exactly.
All right. Well,
Yes.
listen. All right. We won't beat a dead horse.
Another guy that comes to my mind, right?
No, let's beat it. Let's keep
Jameison
going.
is a guy like
Let's keep
Derek.
hitting
Look,
it.
I don't think he's a Hall of Fame. Is Derek Coleman a Hall of Famer? But I think of Derek Coleman.
Well,
Same
we'll
type
agree,
of thing.
We'll agree to disagree. I don't
Yeah,
think there's any
great
more to be
player,
said there.
but
Jameison,
attitude.
a lot of players, what did you make of the whole Kawhi Leonard situation where, these guys are sitting out? Do you think it sets a bad precedence for the league? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this really depends on the situation. I mean, he's actually hurt. Like, if you look at him walk, you look at him play, you can tell he's not 100%. Like, it shows that he's not 100%. Like, it's obvious. However, the load management thing, again, there's no right or wrong answer because every situation is different. Teams have more information than ever before, and how many games should a body go through a certain amount of time? When should a guy take a rest? Like, they have all that information now that they never had before. So when you make big investments like they've done within players, then you're going to use all the information possible to make a decision. So I get their side of it, but as a casual fan, I'd be upset too because if you save up money to go to a game, the star player isn't playing,
right,
and your 11-year-old kid wants to see the star player play, that's an unfortunate thing, especially when you don't find out until 3 hours before the game.
Yeah, Jameison,
That's
can't there be?
unfortunate.
Jameison,
Right,
can't there?
I agree.
Jameison, can't there be a compromise? And what I mean by that is this: if a guy isn't 100%, put him out there, start him, play him 4 or 5 minutes. If you don't play him the rest of the game, fine. But I think at least let him be in the layup line. At least let a kid see him play for a few minutes.
So how long was Kevin Durant in the game when he got hurt in the playoffs, Brian?
Completely
10
different
minutes, 12 minutes.
circumstance. Completely different circumstance. They put him in there way too early.
I think it was 3 to 4
and
minutes.
that was also the playoffs. Completely different circumstance than regular season basketball.
Tua Tagovailoa, do you think he has the Bo Jackson injury on his hip if he's healthy?
No, because Bo had actually hurt the hip before that fatal injury.
Right.
The injury that ended him was just the icing on the cake. He had already injured the hip. He had just kept on playing on it. Plus, medical technology is way different than it was 20-some-odd years ago. So it's a different situation. However, I would not be the number one pick on him. I mean, hip injuries are worse than knee.
no
Like,
chance.
At least a knee, you can kind of rehab with that. Hip is a hip, man. He's already a small guy. He's not as fast as you would think he would be. That's a rough pick. Whoever takes him is taking a big risk. The only issue is this. The quarterbacks that are draft eligible in college, I'm not really so sold on for the next level. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, there's a lot of guys that are like Fromm and Burrow has a hell of a season, but I don't know if he's going to be great in the NFL. Like, not so sure.
Jameison, we only got about a minute here left to go. I always appreciate it when you take some time to join us. Wish we had some more time, actually, but I want to give you a chance to plug where people can find you on social media. Where can they find your work, my friend, and where can people hear you?
Well, on Twitter at the Jameison. On your show, hopefully once a week or more going forward. Not really got a time locked down. ESPN 1100 in the city as well. Drive Time Sports, 750 in Utah, 1340 Fox Sports in New Mexico, and ESPN 1480 in Nebraska.
All right, Jameison, you're a busy guy. Yes, and by the way, I do want to nail that down with you. I do want you to come on our show weekly, especially during the basketball season. Jameison, it's always...
Can you make it in studio next time, Jameison?
I can see what I can do. We can make it work.
Perfect.
Cool.
Perfect.
Jameison, it's always a pleasure to have you in.
Thanks, buddy.
Have you on. You know that,
you,
and we appreciate it. Thanks, Jameison.
Appreciate it.
All right, there you go. Jameison Welsh from Drive Time Sports joining us. Wow.
He agrees with me. Dwight Howard, Shap.
Well, I know. That's
There he
fine.
is.
That's fine.
If you look
Although
at
I will say the poll agreed with you. I ran the poll on Twitter.
the problem with
And they
Howard
were
is
on Shapiro's side on this.
he has not had a great last 5 to 6 years.
Well, listen.
Well, no. Absolutely
we got a break. I will agree with you only if you continue to take your shirt off at UNLV football games.
I think
all.
that's
All right.
fair.
All right, we're going to take a 21-hour break. Chris, always a pleasure to have you in studio. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
We're going to take a 21-hour break. Sean Hannity coming up next, folks. Have a great day.